Hey, podcast listeners. This is episode 90, How to Communicate with Angels. What? Did I say angels? Yes, I did. That's kind of normal in my life now. So I give you some tips and tricks on how to communicate with the angelic realms if that is what you want to do. Stay tuned and enjoy the episode.
You're listening to Let's Get Metaphysical. This podcast explores the spiritual and metaphysical world through the experiences and opinions of the host and those interviewed. It should not necessarily be seen as direct endorsement or personal advice to our listeners. We encourage you to use your own discernment, judgment, and intuition regarding anything you learn from this show.
Let's get meta.
Welcome to the Let's Get Metaphysical Podcast. I'm your host, Renata Hana Maniaci, here to remind you that you are a divine, spiritual being having a temporary human experience here on lovely planet Earth. Make the most of it. This is episode 90, How to Communicate with Angels. But before I jump into that, I have a few thoughts for today and a few announcements, starting with the announcements. We are nearing the last few events of the Light of Life tour with John Douglas. If you are interested in taking part of these amazing, healing, advanced spiritual development events remotely, you can join online. Then check out masterangels.org to sign up for an event. We have a couple more left and they are life-changing. One event can be completely healing and life-changing for you. And they are that for me, and that's why I join the entire tour whenever I can. My thought for the day is this. This evening had the great opportunity to catch up with a few of my dear friends that I haven't talked to in a long time, a couple years. And we were all catching up with each other, and they asked me what was going on in my life. And one of them asked me about my spiritual community and to talk a little bit about that. And I started talking about it and trying to describe it and just share what my life is like kind of day to day and what I'm doing and what's important to me. And I realized while doing that just how normal my life seems to me because I'm living it, and just how abnormal or out there it sounds when describing it. When seeing it from the perspective of these two friends, I was just thinking about how much my life has changed in the last few years and how much I just truly love my life and feel like there is purpose, like there's a reason for me being here, and how much I've changed and evolved. And then trying to explain that to my friends who I haven't spoken with in a couple years, and recognizing how different of a reality I used to live in from what I live in now, and how it's not easy to explain to people, even though I consider myself a fairly good communicator when explaining stuff like this. But the conversation was basically like, talk to angels every day, and I don't worry about getting sick because 9 times out of 10 I can heal whatever might be going on with me, and if I can't, my community or my spiritual teacher can take care of that. Yeah, it's been a really blissful last couple of years with ever expansive awarenesses and spiritual development and life lessons and tests of initiation passed, and it's been great. And that's not normal. And while I was saying that, I realized that it wasn't normal, and I acknowledged that. and just how different my life is from when we had all first met about 15 years ago. So I guess my reason for sharing that is that we all grow in our lives. We all have situations that change us, and I'm sure every single person listening to this can think of at least one thing about their life now that they would have never dreamed would have been a reality for them even a couple of years ago, but certainly, 10 or 20 years ago, for example. And I look at my life now and I could not have seen any of this coming from my conventional human self. I was a really big planner and I usually had at least 2 to 3 years ahead of my life planned out until, I don't know, around 27 or 28 years old. And now it's just one beautiful, evolving journey. And I'm sure you all can feel the same way. And I think my friends felt the same way too, perhaps. But just listening to our conversations, it just felt so different. And not good, different, or bad, different, or anything. It just was different. And I recognized the need to kind of just laugh about my reality. Because when you're so in it, it's just so normal to you. It's normal for me to communicate with angels and to make prayer requests and to ask for angelic intercession on my behalf if I want to heal something in myself or help somebody else in some kind of way. And, clearing my food of negative bacteria before I ingest it, and meditating and getting all the information that I need for each day, and not putting things in my body that bring in negative spirits or negative energy. It just is my normal. That's just so normal to me now. So what is normal for you? That is a question that I wanted to pose to everyone today, is what is your normal that maybe was never going to be on your plan for being your normal right now? And where do you want to go from here? And with that, I'm going to do my invocation and continue on with this episode on how to communicate with angels. Masters and angels, I request your presence, support, guidance, clarity for this episode and all episodes. Please help me to be in alignment. Please help me to use the words that will help the most people. Please help me to speak the truth, know the truth, become the truth, and be the truth. And please let this episode reach whoever needs to hear it. Thank you, with gratitude and full faith. So, I guess I never really had a time where I did not believe in angels. There wasn't like a specific period of my life where I was just like, no, I don't believe in angels. That was never part of my reality, but I didn't actively think about it. But what was interesting is about maybe more than 10 years ago now, maybe more like 15 years ago, one of the first times that I ever kind of started interacting with angels on a fairly regular basis was in airplanes. And it happened without me trying to communicate with them. What would happen is we would be taking off, that part right before you take off when you're flying down the runway and then you're about to lift off. In my mind's eye, I would see an angel who I just felt intuitively was Joan of Arc. And it was like she would be holding the air traffic control things, and kind of like waving the plane forward. And then on either side of the plane, I felt angels kind of flying along on either side and taking off along with the plane. And that is not coming from any kind of conversation I had or intention that I set. It's not coming from any kind of drug or alcoholic experience. It just started happening that way. And that was before I had any kind of what I would consider spiritual awakening or even going down the path of energy medicine. It was before all of that, years before that. And it just became a thing, and it happened naturally, and I didn't have to remember it or think about it, but it happened every time I was taking off. And time passed, and I'm sure there was different experiences here and there that would, pop in every once in a while and feel somewhat spiritual or somewhat mystical or magical. And then I'd go on with my life and forget about that. And then in 2014, everything kind of started to open up when I began to take healing touch classes, energy medicine classes, and specifically start to meditate and things like that. And then it became just kind of a common, normal thing for me to check in with my guidance every day just by asking a question or even just saying hello and giving and allowing the space to listen to see if I received or heard or saw anything back. And that's my own personal story on how I began to regularly communicate with the angelic realms. And I say angelic realms, but I also feel like I've communicated with other types of guidance, and I'm not going to differentiate here, but you may do that. And you may be communicating with ascended masters, or what you might call your guardian angels or your spirit guides, or animals, or any other kind of non-physical helper, higher power, super friend, spiritual companion, however you want to call this realm. Since lately, I mostly am specifically communicating with what I would call angels or ascended masters. That's why I titled this episode that way. But really, it's connecting with any kind of intelligence, unseen higher intelligence. And I say higher intelligence because much of the time, if you want to be communicating with that kind of guidance, you want it to be a higher intelligence than us currently in this physical state, even if it's your own soul, even if it's your own high self. Because at that level, at that higher vibration, they are more knowing, more all-knowing than we currently are in this 3D physical state. So there's many different ways to communicate or to start trying to communicate with the angels or with any of these other beings. Beings that mean you well, let's say, because there's everything, right? There's the beings that mean you well and the more pernicious influences or negative influences. We have all the things in this arena here on and around planet Earth and the universe in general. And here I really only focus on communicating with the good, communicating with higher vibrations, higher levels of consciousness for a positive outcome. A lot of folks do this through meditating. I particularly enjoyed communicating through a guided meditation or guided meditations because I was very much in my head, in my mind, was thinking a lot. I still can do that sometimes, but this was kind of a hallmark of my personality, very much in my mind. So it helped me to have something to focus on through something like a guided meditation, and that might work for you. But I also tried things like writing down questions, opposite hand writing. So this would be like writing a question that you had with your dominant hand and then changing to your non-dominant hand and just receiving and writing the answer, whatever came through without thinking. I still do that sometimes when I have specific questions that I need help with. And it is pretty amazing. The answers that come through my non-dominant hand, which in my case is my right hand, do not sound like the questions or other writings of my dominant hand. I have experienced these answers to be one of two things: either my high self, my soul, communicating to me without the lower level human construct of the mind, just kind of bypassing that and just speaking clearly through my non-dominant hand. And I've also experienced the answers coming through that hand as angelic beings or ascended masters, and it can change from time to time. So that's another way that I like to communicate. Also, simply just coming to a still place within yourself and asking, either out loud or in your mind, who's here with me today? And then listening for an answer, or asking, what do I need to know today? And listening for an answer. These are a few different ways of communicating with your highest unseen angelic guidance. Now, you might be somebody who is actually more clairvoyant than I happen to be at the moment. You might actually see these beings, and people do. You might actually hear these beings with your ears. Or you might see or hear these beings with your mind's eye or kind of inside your head and not with your actual external ears, right? But they communicate in many ways. And sometimes it might take time for you to recognize the way that they are communicating with you, or the way in which you will recognize that they are communicating with you. And what do I mean by that? I mean that there are so many different ways for us to receive messages that once we become aware of these ways, once we really sink into and open up to the possibility that we could be being communicated with by these beings almost at all times, it's pretty extraordinary and quite surprising, to be honest. So what do I mean by that? I mean, yes, you can be in a meditation, say a guided meditation, and, it will walk you through it. They'll leave space in the meditation so that, and then this guide walks into the cabin and you'll see that person walk in your mind's eye, right? So there's that, but there's also, just like I said before, becoming still and quiet and asking a question and then just listening for the answer. And you'll see something, you'll get an image in your head, you'll hear a word in your head, you'll see a word in your head, you'll just know. That's called claircognizance. You'll just know the answer. Okay, those are ways, but there's also other ways. You might walk outside and see a truck go by and a few words on the truck will pop out at you, and that is a direct answer to whatever question you were asking. And you'll know because you'll notice the words. Whereas, 4 other trucks could have gone by and you wouldn't have noticed what it said on those trucks, right? The communication comes through in a way that it will strike us as being something out of the ordinary or something meant for you. Now, the same thing can happen when you turn on the radio in your car and a certain song comes on and that song means something to you, or it's something that you've never heard before, but there's a certain phrase in the song, a lyric that is resonating with you. And that can be an answer to a question, or it can be a message for you. And you recognize it because it's something that you notice. It's something that you become aware of. Out of all the things in the day, throughout the day, you become aware of this thing. And it resonates with you on some level. And when we can open up to that awareness, man, you can really, really be getting messages all day long. And it's not just that. One of the ways that my angelic teams communicate to me with, and I've said this before on the podcast, is through playing songs in my head. So it's not like I'll have heard them on the radio subtly in the background somewhere. Like I could have been at my house all day doing work, not listening to anything, and all of a sudden I will realize that I've had the same song in my head for 2 hours. And it takes me that long sometimes to even recognize that I've been singing the same tune, the same chorus of a song for, 2 hours. And then I pay attention to the exact words that have been in my head, and that will be a message for me. And this happens literally all the time. Literally all the time for me. It even happens with songs that I don't know. So sometimes I will get the tune in my head and I'll know that it's a song, like I'll know it's from the radio or something, and I can even type in the words that I'm getting in my head to find the song, and it will be a thing. For me, most often they give me messages through musical songs because I happen to know a lot of musicals, and musicals have a song about everything, every situation. So it's kind of a good way for them to convey messages for me because they just have to find the right song that has the right words in the right situation and energy of whatever they're trying to get across. But your mileage may vary. Maybe for you, it's something completely different, right? But you get to find out what that is because they will if you are trying to communicate with them, they will communicate back, and usually it'll be right away. It's not like you have to wait 4 days. You ask for something and then like 6 days later, a message comes through. That's typically not what it's like in my experience. It's if you are asking for something and you have the presence of mind to listen, and not just listen with your ears, listen in all ways, in all senses of that word. And be aware, just be generally aware. You will receive an answer. You will receive communication, whether it's through seeing a sign that you pass, or a song on the radio, or literally getting an image of something, or hearing something said to you, or, even I talk about this before. In Costa Rica, I feel like this happens more often, but it actually happens here too, is you can hear nature. Nature will answer you, and that will be an angelic way to get your attention. So a lot of times in Costa Rica, you'll be talking to somebody and somebody will say something that is true or resonates, and then you will hear a gecko go, gah, 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 gah. And it is literally nature reaching out to you to confirm what has been said as true. It's like, that might sound a little out there, but it happens so frequently, but not in like random ways. Like if something is said that is true or you need to pay attention to, it's like nature and the universe and the angels combine to throw that message into a gecko, making its noise so that you can become aware that something was just said that was really important that you should pay attention to, or, this happens in regular, everyday things too. Something happens and across the room, somebody drops a glass and it shatters. And that can often be the exact same thing in a different form, something to pay attention to. Oh, what did that person just say? Because that was like a highlight. That was like an underline, like pay attention. So now that we're talking about this, I'm hoping that there's different examples coming to you right now about how they communicate back. And it could just be simple. You might just ask something and just boom, get the answer. It just like appears in your head. You know exactly what it is. You have no trouble with this. This is fine. And maybe if you are one of those people, talking about this right now is going to open up more and more ways to communicate and to grow your awareness in how the unseen angelic realms may be communicating with you. The main takeaways for this episode are really, one, you need to communicate with them. You need to show that you are trying and that you want and desire to communicate with the angels by talking to them, or by, internally asking them questions in your mind or writing them down or whatever. But you need to make an effort. You need to be like, hey, I want to talk to you guys in some way, right? And number two, you need to listen. You need to become very aware of how they might be reaching out to you. And I promise they are reaching back out to you. You just need to understand how, and understand how you receive their messages best. Because it can be in any one of these ways, or it can be in a completely different way than I've even mentioned. I didn't even mention this. This will sound crazy. They tap on my window, and they have been for years. And this is only at a very specific time. It's usually when I'm supposed to go to bed or when I'm supposed to wake up. Now that sounds out there, but I guarantee you, when I look at my window, there is nothing there for years. And it's only at specific times. It's when I'm staying up too late and I need to go to bed because sleep is really important. I do a lot while I'm sleeping on the spiritual level, and I'm sure that you do too. So it is an important thing, and I actually need to sleep to be able to rest and do the things that my soul can do while I'm sleeping that I can't do while I'm awake. And then they'll tap to wake me up. Or to start listening to a John Douglas process or something like that in the morning. So it might be very physical, is what I'm saying. I didn't even really mention that before, but it might be a very physical thing. So make it obvious that you want to communicate, and then listen and figure out how they communicate with you. I'm going to leave it there for this portion of the episode. Godspeed in your communication with the angelic realms. Thank you so much for joining me for that episode. That was really nice to be able to actually talk through this a little bit and recognize that, yeah, this is my life and it looks a little weird, but this is pretty normal, and it can be normal for you. Check out patreon.com/letsgetmeta for some awesome bonus content for this episode. We'll be clearing some blocks to communicating with the angelic realms. It will be very useful for you if you're having some issues. And I'm going to leave it there for now, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening. Stay positive, stay safe, and stay meta.
The Let's Get Metaphysical podcast is an Up and Awaken production. Our intention is to raise the vibration of the planet by sharing, validating, and normalizing spiritual and metaphysical experiences. If you are ready to raise your vibration, you might enjoy our free Let's Get Meta Master Clearing. To receive the Master Clearing or to learn more about the podcast, visit letsgetmeta.com. The show is produced and hosted by Renata Maniaci. You can access more awakening content, join our membership community, or become one of our angel donors by visiting upandawaken.com. Thank you for listening. Stay meta.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.